Today we are revisiting a feature of the X100V I briefly glanced over in one of my past videos, the AF range limiter. The X100V has been my go-to camera for street photography. Having used it for close to 2 years, I feel like I've fallen into complacency with the way I use this camera. As a creature of habit, it took me a while to get accustomed to and set up the camera in the way I found most effective and efficient to operate. Once I did all that, well, the rest was history. But these past couple of weeks of horrendous Sydney weather has allowed me to take a step back and really look back at the photos I've taken and figure out what I could potentially be missing. What I noticed was a frequent recurrence of photos that looked similar due to unchanging ways of the way I set up and use my camera. I thought to myself, was there a way I could break out of this repetition? Open myself up to something new to stimulate my senses and provide a bit more challenge. Then I remembered that one feature on the X100V that I neglected and I've not heard many other people mention. Let's talk about the AF range limiter, how it works, how to set it up, and what it can potentially do for you and your street photography. The AF range limiter can be found easily by going into the menus. Under the AF/MF tab, scroll to the third page. So it's a good idea to set your AF range limiter to a function button or an action. I'm going to quickly show you how to do that in the menus. You're going to go into the wrench icon and you're going to go to button dial settings, and then you're going to go down to function settings. And under function settings you have all the buttons and which button correlates to which, so you can select which button you want to assign AF range limiter to. So for instance, for myself, I've set the AF range limiter to T function 3, which is touch function 3. So if I swipe right on the touch screen, it'll allow me to access AF range limiter. Before we go over how to set it up, the testing and its pros and cons, let me try to explain how this feature works in the simplest way possible. The X100V has autofocus. You set the focus point and let the camera's computational power do the rest. It works well for the majority of use cases, but it is by no means perfect. Sometimes it can get confused, and when that happens, it will try to redeem itself by refocusing from the closest point to infinity and try to land itself back on the focus point with varying levels of success. This is called focus hunting. The AF range limiter aims to reduce this hunting time by setting further parameters. By setting the closest distance and the furthest distance closer together, it essentially tells the camera to only hunt between those two distances. And if you can imagine, the smaller the two distances are apart from each other, the faster the camera can acquire focus. Now we are talking focusing speed improvements in fractions of seconds, so it may not seem perceivably different to our eyes, and in most shooting scenarios, you don't need that extra fraction of a second. But if you prefer to run and gun and work a bit faster on the streets, every fraction counts. Now let's do some tests and see how this works. Okay, we're in my room. How I got this set up is I've got the wireless remote camera shutter attached to the X100V. It's to take photos wirelessly. I've got the HDMI cable attached to my computer, as you'll see. It records the back of my LCD screen. Currently I'm measuring out the distance between here and where I'm going to be standing, 1 meter, and now I'm measuring to the chair, which is 2 meters. So jumping onto the back of the LCD screen, I'm going to change the range limiter and set it to 0.5 meters and 1 meter. So hopefully everything between those two distances will be in focus. Currently I'm in spot AF, that little square in the center, which is spot. I will be testing out zone and white tracking as well. So right now I'm just standing in front of the camera making some tests. I'm standing roughly like in between 0.5 and 1 meter away, seeing if the autofocus will pick me up. Now I'm standing back at 2 meters. As you can see, I'm in the box, but it won't focus because there is nothing in that distance. Pushing my hand forward into distance, and it seems like when I move my hand away from the spot AF, it doesn't focus on my hand anymore. So now I switch over to zone AF, doing the same test, same 0.5 meter to 1 meter focus range. As you can see, it doesn't focus on my hand until I move it within the range, and then you can see if my hand is within that zone box, then it will focus. If it's outside of it, then it refuses to focus. Switching over to wide tracking, we repeat the process. Easy, checking my face, putting the hand in front of the camera just to trick the camera and see if it focuses on my face still. Even partially blocking the lens, it seems to like to focus on my face, so that's pretty good. Standing back, obviously doesn't catch anything. Moving my hand around on the screen, it seems to pick up at some points, no matter where the hand is placed on the screen. So that's pretty cool. Alright, we're switching back to single point, and now I'm changing the range to preset 1, which is from 2 meters out to infinity. So technically anything that's where my chair is and behind the chair is going to be where the camera is going to focus on. So I'm standing close now. As you can see, it's not picking up anything. So as I sit down on my chair, yes, it's picking up on my face. It detects the face. Pushing my hand forward, doesn't detect, detects. Seems like it has to be within the focus box in order for it to detect. Yep, moving close, doesn't pick up, picks up on the chair instead. Switching over to zone. Moving the zone to the right side a little bit. Yes, it's picking me up. But it's not picking me up, it's actually picking up the background within that zone box. So I was up front and it was detecting things that were behind me. Now everything should be in focus. I'm going to switch it over to continuous autofocus now. Changing it to wide tracking and just checking to see whether or not it focuses. So as I move, and I set it back to 0.5 meter and between 0.5 meter and 1.5 meters. So as I'm moving my hand around, it is trying to detect what it wants to focus on, and it seems like it is tracking my arm or my hand. Sometimes it breathes a little bit, but for the most part, it does follow my hand around. And if I move closer to the camera, yep, it's still detecting my face. A little bit slow, but it seems like my face is in focus for the most part. Now I'm sitting back on my chair and it shouldn't be picking up on my face. Nope, I'm out of focus and it doesn't detect anything. As soon as I move my hand forward, yep, detects. Sit back. Nope, nothing. Go back to zone. Same deal. Sitting back on the chair. Nothing. Now I walk slowly forwards and yep, it's starting to detect. As I move slowly forwards, it will keep tracking my face. As long as my face is within that box, it will maintain continuously tracking my face as I move closer, as long as I'm between 0.5 meters and 1.5 meters. There you go. Pretty cool. Nope, doesn't focus. Yes, it does focus. Alright, so doing some real world testing now. Trying to test out the range by shooting through windows. Very difficult if you're shooting autofocus and you don't have range limiter on. Sometimes autofocus likes to play tricks and gets confused, especially if there's reflections in the windows. So the AF range limiter does help in some ways to reduce the chances of missing focus. It will always try to focus and aim at things that are 1.5 meters away. I currently have this set to, I think it was between 1.5 and 2 meters. So I'm trying to judge distance by standing at the right spot and keeping myself at roughly 1 meter or 1.3 meters, so that I know whatever's behind that window will be roughly 1.5 meters away. So here, shooting through a Starbucks window, see a couple, they're studying. Just pop the camera up, boom. I am shooting in burst mode to minimize my chances of not getting a shot in focus. Shooting in continuous autofocus, of course. Here, demonstrating the fact that it will only focus on things at a certain distance away, so the boy in the foreground is blurred out and it maintained focus on the guy in the center. Here, walking towards a lady, keeping my distance, continuous autofocus, and burst mode really helps to nail that focus. And finally, shooting through some wired cage, some boys behind that wire, and the cage is blurred and the boys are in focus. So after all that, I hope you can deduce for yourself what settings will work best with AF Range Limiter. If not, here's a summary. AF Range Limiter works best when you are working with continuous AF mode, using zone or wide tracking, and are shooting in burst mode. Personally, that would be my approach with the AF Range Limiter. Have it set between 1 to 3 meters and aim to take photos of subjects within that range. Continuous burst helps greatly if both you and the subject are moving in tandem, or you are stationary and the subject is approaching you. Let's round things up by talking about the pros and cons. The pros. This will increase chances of acquiring focus faster and more accurately on moving subjects at a certain distance away from you. It greatly reduces the time taken and improves the chances of shooting through reflective surfaces. And you'll become better at predicting range using this feature. The cons. It only has one custom setting slot. It also requires you to set it to a function button or an action to access it quickly. If you shoot at varying focus distances, it can become a hassle and you may often forget to turn it off. This will not guarantee success. There will still be a certain margin of error even when using this feature. So I hope you guys learned a little bit about the AF Range Limiter. The best way to use this feature is to practice on the streets, so go out there and get shooting. If you'd like to know more about how to use the X100V, I've got other videos on my channel to help you out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.